Hello, my name is Eoin and I'm a horticultural tutor with the City of Dublin Education Training Board. Today's video I'm going to look at sowing seed. Specifically going to look at pollinator friendly plants. So I have 5 different plants chosen. And don't worry, some of the spellings are quite a mouthful, so I'll show you each seed packet as we're working with it. So we have mesembryanthemums, cosmos, calendulas, sunflower and tomato. So essentially what we need I have in front of me, so we have our pots. Some of them I've already pre-filled with compost and some of them have seed in them already. It's kind of ones I've done earlier. We have our seed, we have water and compost. So that's all we're going to need. And also plant labels, very important to put down what you've planted and the date that you plant them on. Very good key notes to have. So the pots we're going to be using today are, I have a fibre pot, which is a pot that actually can be, once you sow your seed, it can be planted straight into the ground once the plant has gotten more established, and it will break down in the soil and the roots will be able to penetrate through the pot, and so there's straight from pot into the ground. And then I also have plastic pot. This is for the mesembryanthemums because the seed is so tiny that putting down 1 or 2 is nigh on impossible. So these will start the seeds off in these, and then we will transplant them into larger pots once they get established. So I suppose they're just the two pots we're going to use, and then also obviously a tray which doesn't have any drainage holes in it, so that's for watering the plants, because I'm going to water them from the bottom, so you just pour the water in and let the pots soak them up. So there are 2 types of compost you can use, or there's more than 2, but I mean I have 2 different types of compost here that you can use. I have a specific, it's a seed and cutting compost. Generally comes in a bag that size, a 10 litre, quite small, expensive for what you get, but essentially it's, I suppose, probably a better compost to put your seeds into because it's lower in nutrients than, would say, your general purpose compost, and seeds don't need a huge amount of nutrients to germinate. Generally all the requirements that they have, and food requirements and nutrient requirements, are contained within the seed themselves, so it's only once they get established that you actually need to start feeding them. And then I have a general multi-purpose compost, which is perfectly fine for growing seed as well, and it's generally what I generally use myself as well, but just thought I'd show you the 2 of those. So I suppose filling your pots, I'm going to fill the plastic one first, but the same principle applies across the board. So you just get a handful of your compost. Now you don't want to fill right to the top, because obviously you're going to put seed in, and generally you're going to put a scattering of compost on top of this, so you don't want too much in it initially. And also, if your compost is flush with the lid around here, when you water, the water will just run off and you end up maybe not watering the plant to the same extent as you should be able to. Unless if you're watering from the bottom, it's a little less of a problem, but still not a good idea to fill right to the rim. And then we have our peat pots. Again, there's no drainage holes. Vitally important if you're using any other kind of pot for planting seed that has a drainage hole. You know, you could, if you want to use homemade versions of this, you could use a toilet roll, you know, that's cut in half, and you can fold the bottoms over. That doesn't necessarily have to be shop bought ones. Or you could use yogurt pots and just make sure they have a hole in them, so you don't necessarily have to go out and buy pots. But anyway, the same principle applies. You fill your pot, not quite to the lid, and you may get a couple of lumps in your compost as well. Just make sure you pick them out, because if a seed goes on top of those, or if they sit on top of a seed, it's much harder for the seed to germinate. So again, I'm going to fill 3 of these quite quickly, and we'll get them done. You can wear gloves for this if you want, it's optional. You know, when you're working with shop bought compost, generally soil is clean enough, and you know you're probably not going to pick up anything from it. If you're working in soil that maybe you don't know what's gone into it, maybe better to wear gloves. So these guys, the back ones here, I've already filled with seed, so they don't need anything to go into them. These ones here, so the first 5 have seed to go in. Now, the first one we're going to use is mesembryanthemum. and the variety of this one is Livingstone Daisy mixed, so it's a good colourful variety. Now the seeds in this are absolutely tiny. Sorry, they're not even in there. They're in the small little packet that they come in, inside the big one. They're minuscule, so in terms of how to even space them out when it comes to planting them, is, I suppose it's a hard one. So it's better to just scatter them over. And as I said, that's why I'm planting them in a plastic pot, because once they germinate and have grown a little bit, I'll transplant them onto individual pots. So all I'm doing is just taking a pinch, like a pinch of salt, and scatter them over the surface. That's a lot of seed even for one pot, but again, they can be a hard one to work with. Interesting enough, this is one I put down actually a week ago, last Wednesday, and you can see they should germinate within 14 to 21 days, so it's like 2 to 3 weeks, but actually already just in 7 days we have a couple of, or maybe 5 or 6 seeds coming out already, so that's good. The weather has been warm, so, and I have them sitting inside the porch as well, so they have not been exposed to any cold evenings that we've had. So again, I'm just going to give it a light scattering of compost over the top, very, very light, because they don't need, because they're so small. If I bury them too deep, it'll take too much energy for them to push up through the soil, and they'll pay for that in terms of flowering and stuff like that. Next one we're moving on to is Cosmos Candy Stripe. So again, these are a fantastic plant. They flower for a long period of time. Again, these ones can either go inside or outside at this time of year. If you were to plant them any sooner than now, you'd probably want to put them inside, but for now, from now on, they can be put outside. So again, a very different type of seed. As you can see, quite long. So again, these ones, I'm going to put just 2 in the pot, and they can be separated out, but I'm just going to put 1 here, and you're just laying them on the surface. That's all you need to do. And I'm going to pop the rest back in here, save them for later. And then again, a nice little scattering of seed. Now the next one you'll probably be familiar with, or maybe not, but these are calendulas. This is Upsy Daisy. So they're a pot marigold, fantastic plant. Generally, you'll buy seed once, and they seed so freely that you generally don't need to buy them again. So in terms of, if I was to just throw these out in a patch of soil, they would probably just grow for you, no problem whatsoever. But they look a bit like dried up caterpillars or something like that. They're a funny one, but they're a lovely plant in terms of they flower for such a long period of time. But I'm going to put 2 in here also. But also, they're a great companion plant if you're growing vegetables. So what they do is, if you're growing tomatoes, the smell of them keeps away whitefly, which can be a problem with tomatoes. They also attract aphids away, so if you're growing vegetables beside it, they will actually attract the aphids to their own flowers instead of the vegetables. And also they attract lacewing and ladybirds and hoverflies, which prey on aphids. So again, they are a good companion plant to have if you are growing any veg. But if you're not growing veg, they're still a great plant to have in the garden. Again, small scattering. I mean, these guys, as I said, if I left them without covering, they'd still germinate. There's no issues there. The next one then, let's say we're all familiar with sunflower. This is called a giant single. So this one grows to about 6 foot, which is the height of myself. So again, once it gets established, it will need support. But again, they can be a fantastic one if you want to even grow a few on and give some as a present. They can be a nice little gift. Let me see. Do I have a dibber with me? I thought I did, but anyway, I can use this here. So these ones they're slightly larger seed, so they go down slightly deeper. Now, when I talk about dibber, you can use anything. You can use a stick, you can use a pencil, you can use your finger depending on what you're planting. I'm just going to use the label here. So again, I'm just placing the seed into the hole, again on its side, and then just cover it over. You don't need to put any additional compost on top of that. And generally, with any of these seeds, you're looking at maybe 2 weeks to 2 weeks plus for germination before you see any activity. As I was saying, you might get it sooner depending on weather. And then last but not least, tomato. So this is a variety, it's Outdoor Girl. I suppose the beauty of growing tomato from seed is that you get a huge choice in variety. If you're buying them in the shops, you can buy them, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying them in the shops. It's not a cheat. I mean, when you get them, they're quite small, so you have to still put a lot of work into getting them to fruit and all that. But you're generally, I suppose, the choice of varieties is fairly small. You might get Moneymaker or then the rest of them. Moneymaker, or I can't think of the rest of the names of them now, but again, buying seed, you generally you can choose from a larger variety. So again, that's the seed. They're just tomato seeds. You'll see them when you're eating tomatoes. These ones are completely dried out, obviously. So again, I'm just going to place them on here. And then do a small scattering of compost over. And that's basically it. And I suppose, tomato you might consider, it's not grown for its flowers as such. Why would you include it in pollinator friendly? But I suppose in terms of tomatoes, they do need, to actually produce fruit, they need to be pollinated. So, and the more they are pollinated, the bigger crop you will get. So, I mean, they do fall into that category. So, along with your strawberries and all that. So the next thing is, so we have our seeds planted here. The next thing is water. So you need to be very careful when you planted seed that, if I was to, I have my watering can here, if I was to just pour straight onto here, I'd probably dislodge a lot of the seed that I've already sown. So that's why it's ideal to be able to water from the bottom. So again, I'm just pouring in, just to fill the bottom. Make sure you're not pouring in too much, but I'll pour another bit in this side. And the peat pots, or the fibre pots, you'll see they start to soak up the water. So it's very easy to see how much water they've taken up. If it only goes up to halfway, you can pour in more and let it soak up. But generally you'll see that even if it's just the plastic pots, you'll see the surface get wet if you've poured in a lot. Now, if you find you've poured in too much, you can take all your pots out and pour out the excess water. But also a good idea is probably to, if you have one of these sprayers as well, just to give them a light spray on the top as well, just to wet it. So again, you're not going to dislodge or disrupt the soil you've put over. And that's basically it. Last but not least, as I said at the start, labeling is very important. So I've done the labels out here. So we have our mesembryanthemums, and I have the date, so the 25th of March 2020. So again, I'm going to stick that in here. I have to remember what order I did them in now. So again, the calendula, I think was these guys here. Of course, I've done it backwards. I should have gone with Cosmos next. Your tomato. And sunflower. So there you have it. It's very straightforward. And I suppose ideally keep them watered, don't let them dry out at all. And once they germinate, then you can look at potting them on and getting them outside. If you are looking for more information on pollinator-friendly plants, pollinators.ie or www.pollinators.ie is a great resource. It's run by the National Biodiversity Centre in Waterford. They have a huge amount of information on it in terms of plants and, I suppose the different pollinator species. So again, one worth checking out if you have any interest in that kind of thing.